So welcome to the people here and also online. We've got quite a few people who are joining us online, which is fantastic. And we've had some great feedback from them as well. Just a reminder to put your phones on silent, please. But you can keep your Slido poll open. And just a reminder too, if you're doing any posts, we'd love you to do some posts about the conference. We really want to get the word out about the great things that are happening in the bioeconomy space. Use that hashtag BundyBio21. So the hashtag for the conference to use in any social media posts is BundyBio21. I'd like to say a big thank you to all those who have made the conference possible, and we'd like to acknowledge the event partners, Bundaberg Regional Council, Fraser Coast Regional Council, Gympie Regional Council, and the Bundaberg Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning. Their partnership has been integral in making this event happen. We'd also like to thank the speakers and local industry who have allowed us to visit their sites. I know yesterday's visit went really well, and we've got a couple more today. You taking the time to commit to this event has allowed it to go ahead, along with the showcasing of our wonderful region. So we please thank all those people very much. Now, yesterday, of course, was the Melbourne Cup, and everyone got into the spirit of it and took a ticket from our sweep. One of the winners actually wasn't here yesterday when we gave out the prizes, but they are today. David Mcdermott, can you come up and get your prize, please? He's right up the back of the room, so we're going to totally embarrass him. David has won an amazing pack of some wonderful local products from the Bundy region, from Cha Cha Chocolate, an amazing local store. So, well done. Would you like the bag? You can even have the bag. There you go. Thank you, David. No seconds, sorry. Only first in this sweep. But it didn't cost you anything, so that was something, Clive. Okay, well, let's get started on our wonderful guest speakers. Our first speaker, and in fact our keynote speaker for today, is Ray Mountford, Managing Director of Leaf Resources. Ray developed the idea to sustainably manufacture turpentine and rosin, is that how you pronounce it? Rosin, after working for a New Zealand-based company, Eka Chemicals, now Lauters, that extracts rosin and terpenes, is that what you say? From the byproducts of the craft pulping process. See, I've learned some stuff already. Noticing the demand for renewable pine chemicals increasing in everyday products and the shortage of supply, Ray identified an opportunity to improve the manufacturing process to produce higher volumes in a cleaner and more environmentally friendly way with no foreign residues in the end product. In July 2016, Ray and his family moved to Gympie. His company, Essential Queensland, commissioned Australia's first natural pine chemical extraction plant in Bundaberg, which we were very excited about. Leaf Resources has a strong ESG focus. The trees are sourced from FSC certified forests, which means for every tree used, another is planted. They have also developed a technology to extract pine chemicals from previously unutilised stumps, which further encourages reforestation. As the first pine chemical manufacturer in the country, Ray would like to share his experience to help develop the Australian sustainable bioeconomy from ideas to action. Please welcome Ray Mountford.
There we go. Good morning.
Fragrances, paint, sticky tape, ink, and food products. Petrochemicals have traditionally been used in all of these products. However, as the world shifts from a fossil-based economy to a sustainable bioeconomy, Leaf Resources' innovative technology is embracing the power of FSC-certified forests, turning forestry waste into sustainable pine chemicals. Leaf Resources produce two products. 1. Terpenes, used for flavourings and fragrances, and 2, rosin, used for adhesives like heavy-duty paint and sticky tapes. The terpenes and rosin can be extracted from any type of pine using Leaf Resources' patented organic solvent extraction technology. We begin our process by sizing the logs or stumps. Then we put them through our chipping machine. The wood is then screened and transferred to a continuous extractor. The resin is washed from the wood using the essential oil of the pine tree as the solvent. The extractor removes both the terpenes and the resin as a liquid, and this is transferred to the distillation section for separation into our final products. The separation process distills the terpenes from the rosin. The terpene is sent down one line and turned into a liquid, and the second line is turned to a harder liquid known as rosin. The terpenes are condensed into bulk storage to be shipped. The rosin is packaged into drums or bags and cooled, ready for selling. No added chemicals, no contamination. And with the leftovers, the water goes into irrigation, the wood into wood pellets as an alternative to coal. Leaf Resources' patented organic solvent extraction technology is a truly circular, sustainable and scalable solution. Join us in creating a fossil-free future.
All right, good morning again. That will be easier for me. Yeah, I just really want to talk about the journey of taking an idea through and executing it to completion, which is again a sustainable business. And I think some of the things there's lots of ideas. Everyone's got great ideas. The difficulty that we have, and the difficulty that we have here in Australia in particular, is converting those. How do we get funds? How do we plan to get funds? How do we plan to execute well? How do we build a team? How do we be successful in an environment that's probably the most heavily regulated environment to start a new business, and particularly manufacturing in the world. And I think, notwithstanding that, we can do it, but we have to address those issues. We have to plan for those issues, and we have to cost those issues into our projects. And how do you take, when you start a business, from third world, because that's where you're starting. You're starting from scratch, to first world, and you're expected to do that by government and all those regulations and all those rules in the first month. Those are the challenges that we face if we want to be real about executing and delivering, this bioeconomy, new manufacturing and solutions to the problems that we're all facing. So I'll just start by telling you how it started, a little bit about myself. Yeah, I'm a expatriate Kiwi, been in Australia 6.5 years now. I call Australia home, my family calls Australia home. 2 of my daughters are married Australian boys from Gympie, lovely chaps. One's a farmer, ginger farmer. The other's a glazier. I've got an Australian grandchild, of course, now. And I love Australia, and I love the fact that this is a land that's big, with big horizons, and it thinks big. And I think, when I look around this room and the people that I've met, many of us have come here to the lucky country, and we're able to make it the lucky country. And I want to embrace that, and I want to talk about how we can continue with that concept today. My background, I'm not a well-trained person in the terms of university and that. I have a diploma in dairy technology. I grew up in a company now called Fonterra in New Zealand. We did some projects back in 2000, but prior to that, in 1987, when I was a young fella, going through my training there, my HR guy that employed me said, you young fellas, you come in here, you take the because they put us through university. But you take the training and then you bugger off overseas and do your OE, and as soon as the training's done, he says, what I want from you, Ray, is when you've done that, you come back here and make some money for us. And that because, young people do need to grow up. So here's a man with vision. And Simon. And that's what happened, actually. I didn't go overseas. I started my own business. I started a little curbing business. I came to Australia for the first time I went overseas. Came to Brisbane, bought a curbing machine, took it back to New Zealand and started a little business called Kiwi Curb. That was in 1987. That business is the biggest business of its type still today in Tauranga Bay of Plenty, New Zealand. They do roading as well as home garden edging and that now as well, some of the big contracts. 4 years later, ironically, on my way to work, I got hit by a logging truck. And such are the turns of life. And rolled 6 times. Busted my back, busted my knee. And so I sold that business and I went back to the dairy company and asked for Simon. The company there was 500 strong. 1% of New Zealand's GDP went through that particular factory. And, Fonterra, you might know, dairy is very big in New Zealand. And so asked for Simon, said, here I am, I'll deliver on that promise. And so he took me on the next day, and it was 18 months after that we won the world manufacturing title for no downtime for an entire season, $35 million on the bottom line. And what we did was I just measured what was going down the river. And this is in the 1990s, and before a lot of these words that we throw around, just sustainability and that, and was sort of fashionable. And 4% of the product from that factory was going down the river. And all I did was stick a solids meter on it and pick up the amount of protein. And that cost about $150. And that $350 grand to implement, $35 million impact. That established some credentials for how we move forward, for what would then happen in my life as when I left there, I took a job at a pine chemicals company. They call, we just mentioned earlier, Eka Chemicals, Mount Maunganui. And, the first day on that job, coming from family background is that we have a joint venture forest with Hancock's, which is the people that own the forest, pine forest that you see between here and Brisbane. It's only a small forest, but we have a strong background in pine chemical and in forestry. And I didn't know about the pine chemicals, but on the first day on that job, and they were saying we can't get supply, and I'm thinking, hang on, we've got 1.5 million hectares of pine down here in New Zealand. You're telling me you can't get the chemicals that are in those trees through our gates? And that just, for me, sparked a journey, a 20-year journey till today that has become my passion, become the driving thing that I like, the reason I get out of bed. Because as I started to understand the industry, as it said there, these are natural, they're existing, and at the moment they're rotting in the ground. So what a hell of an opportunity if you can access it. And but the dumb thing was at the time I started at the top of the tree. I had to learn the animal, I had to learn the industry. And so I started looking for pine chemicals on the tips of the leaves, not in the stumps where they all reside. But anyway, so that's the other thing that impacted me was growing up where I grew up. I mentioned the pine industry. We have pulping, chemical pulping, and it's called sustainable manufacture. And I want to ask us today whether we're calling sustainable manufacturing, what we're calling sustainability. Because the trees that get planted and then harvested, then replanted, yes, that's sustainable. But if your process and how you utilise those has negative or is a destructive process, that doesn't make it sustainable by riding on the back of your supply chain. And I think that, as businesses, we need to look down the supply chain, but we need to also look at ourselves and how we're designing our business. Some of the countries, or certainly Queensland's best scientists, best people in this room, and in the room yesterday. But we don't want to hide behind something else. And that was what I saw there, was that the pulp mills, because they're big, they make a lot of money, they employ a lot of people, they employ, generally speaking, the whole town. So nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, do they? So I was surfing, I'm a keen surfer. I was surfing as a 18, 19-year-old when I was working at the dairy company. I actually got caught. I'd taken a sickie. I got caught at the bloody traffic lights by my boss. But the thing was that, and that's why I got that photo up there. That's actually Double Island Point. That's my son taking off. But I got caught surfing. But the thing was that I was 35 kilometres from the outlet from a river mouth, just like what we have, a river about the size of what we've got down here, the Burnett. And I was the stench of chemicals, sulfides, sulfates, mercaptans, was all over me. And when I got home, my brother, from the distance that Collie is to me now, what's with you? You know, and that had such an impact on me, because my mum used to always talk about how Matata, the little village where I grew up, nearest, I was on a farm of course, but that they had the highest rate of cancer in the country. And now my first chairman and my first mentor when I went into this was actually the general manager of that pulp and paper mill. But he died at the age of 54 of cancer. So those things, that had a huge impact on my life in particular, and then Peter passing. And, there was another chap, Bill. He was the general manager of the tissue factory, toilet paper. He died at 55. Statistically, or whatever, I've got 4 years left or 3 years left. That's the chemicals industry for you. And so are we going to be destructive or non-destructive in how we approach this? Are we going to be sustainable, or are we going to hide behind that word? How do you take a concept conceived pretty much in the surf and turn it into a reality? How do you take a good idea conceived in a workshop and turn it into a reality? Particularly when in the first world, just on compliance alone, you're going to spend, on any small manufacturing plant, you're going to spend, compared to doing it in, let's say, our biggest competitor, China, you're going to spend at least $1 million just for a small unit on compliance issues, whether that be engineers, that design, whether that be electrical compliance in Australia, where you have four different lots of sign-offs versus one in somewhere like New Zealand or the States. You know, where you've got bureaucratic layers that you've got to wade through. These, if we don't consider these things, if we don't plan for these things, they're the things that are going to trip us up and we're going to fail. And I've got some of the things that we need to work through up there on the wall, and we'll go through those. But I'll just go through them quickly. Defining your values and your focus. Who are we? What are we trying to achieve? For me, it was all about, I'm not going to put my ass out there for a business that's destructive. I've got to believe in what I'm doing, and I want a team around me that believes in it. Your key business drivers, profit, guys, is the driver. It's not sustainable if you can't pay the bills. So how do we get there? So many people got an idea and they say, well, if the government does this, then we'll be able to make it work. That's a cop-out. You're trying to pass the buck. You're trying to abdicate your responsibility. Your responsibility as a business or as an idea promoter is to make it happen within the confines on the playground that the government gives us. We can push, we can agitate, you can do all that, and I'm a good agitator. But at the end of the day, it's up to us. If you don't own it, don't get out of bed with it. Just go get a job. And I think that's really important. You know, key business driver for our business is raw materials. But you might be in the transport logistics chain. You might be in the distribution chain. You might be somewhere else, and you need to identify where you are and focus on that. Because as we go along, everyone that you meet, they come along, they say, oh, but what about this? What about that? Particularly if you get some funding, you know. It's called Project Fever. Everyone wants them, you know. Key risks, political risks. Australia's used to be pretty low. It's now actually coming up. For us, supply, raw material, what drives us? You know, implementation, money, profitability, is it investable? Supply chain costs, again, raw material costs for us, because that's what drives us. For some people, it's widgets and wadgets. How do you get them out of China? That's the same with us building a factory. I'll just make a note on that. You know, with widgets and stuff like that, even we get chippers, Vermeer out of the States. 2 years ago, if I wanted to get a new screen for my chipper, I could have it in 7 days. The last one took 5 months. We're having to hold stock on the shelves, and we need a plan for that in our projects as a line item in your capital expenditure. Otherwise, you're going to get caught, because I know we did. And that, you know, I think that's one of the issues. The world's constantly changing, isn't it? And we're either going to stay, you know, we're either going to keep the initiative or we're going to lose the initiative. You know, I always think of it as, I have this picture that this is how I manage things. I'm a visual person, you know, and so I think I've got all these balls that I'm juggling. You know, here's our finances, you know, here's our staff, you know, here's our supply, you know, here's my personal well-being. Have we considered that? My team's personal well-being, have we considered that? I'm not talking health and safety. I'm talking dealing with the stresses of doing this stuff, you know. We all need somewhere to unwind. We all need a plan for that. You know, I think I went too hard at it for too long, and I've spent a lot of this year just trying to get healthy again. Market research, obviously. If you haven't got a market, if you can't sell it, don't bother making it. You know, oh, we're going to create a market. Okay, you've got, you know, if I was climbing, I'm trying to think of, what's it, the big mountain, Bartle Frets or whatever, how you say it, the one up at the top of Queensland there, or that, if you have to create a market, you're climbing Everest. Now, it's still conquerable, but it's not conquerable if you haven't identified that that's much harder. Because if you won't face the reality, how can you do it? You know, start a new industry in a new country is a bit of an Everest. Nobody knows what you're doing. Nobody understands what you're doing. You try to get investment. In our case, so far, I think I've had, what was it, 8, 12, about 13 or 14 million of investment. You know, that's now, I would say that's attracting investment as a pattern of behaviour. It's something that I've become used to and something that I've become proficient at. And I think that is a key, absolute key for anybody considering doing something in this space or any other entrepreneurial or business start space. And I would dare to say it from what I've heard talking to some of the university chaps, that even in their space, you know, where they're spending 20-30% of their time on attracting investment, let's not complain about that. It's a fact of life. I spend that same amount of time on attracting investment. If we embrace it and learn more about it and realise that it's part of our job, put our big boy pants on, we can do better at it. And it's an attitudinal thing, guys. And I'll tell you what, that's how the market embraces it. They don't want someone coming to go, well, if you give me some money, I could do this. You know, They want to see your solutions. They want to see how your capabilities, and they want to see how you're going to execute. That's all they're looking for. They want to see that integrity. If you haven't got that there, that's integrity in every area. That's why they'll look at your OPEX, they'll look at your CAPEX, operation expenses. They'll look at your capital expenses. They'll look to see how well you've planned those. They'll look to see how well you've researched those, how you've costed those. Have you got 3 quotes, 1 quote? Were you lazy in how you did it? Does your model make sense? Does your model show them where they're going to get their return from? When they're going to get their return? Biggest mistake I made for a long, long time was I wanted to own it all myself. You know? And I didn't want to be a public company. I didn't want to have to stand up in front of people. Yet, when COVID hit, I knew that if we didn't change something and change it quick, my dreams were going to be ashes. And it's because it's not a harder environment, guys. It's just different, and that's the best way to process it. You know, change the game in your mind, then you can change the game on the field. So, you know, when COVID hit, I had a little company and we'd started a pilot plant and we'd raised a little bit of money and we had enough momentum to justify a tilt at accessing more money. And that's the thing is that I really want to point out, when you're looking for money, if you don't budget the cost of looking for money and achieving investment, then you're not going to get that investment. If you want, like, if I want to go and get $8 million, which I did back in July, that cost me $800,000 of that $8 million. It's no good. It's no good then griping about saying, well, hang on a minute, I wanted 8 and I only got 7.2 to use. You know what I'm saying? We've got to be smart about how we, and make sure that we put all the costs on the lines. You know, but that's basically, you know, it's what I'm speaking from a stock market perspective. Our company's listed now. It listed on 21st of December. I did a reverse takeover from my startup, Essential Queensland. We took over Leaf Resources. We basically took over their debts and did a merger and ended up with 77% ownership of that company. Brought them vision, brought them direction, brought them a team that could execute a business plan, which is the plan that Essential Queensland had and now that Leaf has. That's innovation in itself, but you know, there are other ways that you can do it. Certainly investors, when they can see the exit and understand how they're going to make their money, because a lot of these businesses, these guys at this stage, at the high risk stage, are not looking for a 10% return on profitability that doesn't turn their wheels. They're looking for what's called a multiple. They're looking for a 4-fold or a 5-fold or a 10-fold, depending on where you are in the startup phase or the commercialization phase. And that means you only get that in really one place, which is on the actual markets. That's when the 10% is, or the, you know, after tax, the 6% is come in. Once you've proven it, once you've got the business in a steady keel trading and so forth. So, and I guess that just talks about, you know, for us, pilot, proof of concept, yep. We all know that. We've got to show ourselves, we've got to show the investors, we've got to build our capability. Everything that we're doing is about capability. Site selection for us, you know, manufacturing, if you can't get a site, if you can't get a place to call home and go about your business, you've got no project. And you know, and I've been very vocal in the support and my support for the Bundaberg Council and how they found us a home. Some of the state people as well, and that's, I think, much more important than getting a grant or anything like that, because that's bankable. It's bankable from the investors, and those same investors are all about making sure you do make a buck. They'll hold you to account to your business plan. Certainly doing that at the moment. investment ready. Everything I'm talking about there is about having all those balls up in the air so that when the investor comes along and he has a look, because you know what? They got 99 reasons to invest, and you've probably all heard this, they only need one not to. They only need one reason to say, well, mate, you haven't secured your supply. I'll come back when you have. You haven't got your team together. You know, you haven't got a leader that can make this happen with a track record. I'll come back when you have. Remember to tell me how much time I've got. Okay. Hiring in regional towns. So I just want to move on a little. Attracting talent. Those are two of our chemical engineers there. They are doing, we employed both them out of university. They're doing great work. We've put in place employee incentive schemes. Why? You know, the train's going at Maryborough is great news, right? How are we going to deal with having to find another 800 people, another 800 homes in a small town? For me, I look at that and go, damn. All the media attention's on them. How am I going to continue to attract and try to attract good people? It's a threat. and it's something that I need to deal with. You know, all our staff, the entire workforce is on a bonus incentive scheme. Company makes a profit if the guy that's packing the resin off doesn't necessarily have a university degree. I think I've got most of my staff in the senior levels, operator up, chemical engineers, process engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers. If I can get an engineer out of university, I will take them tomorrow. We just sign them up. You know, and that we invest in them. We then do focus a lot on the vision. We focus a lot on the story. We're doing something special. You know, we're doing something. Everybody's about everyone's about the environment. Everyone's about that sustainability. When you can actually give somebody say, well, we're actually doing it. You know, every bit of rosin we make removes resin oils, petrochemical oils from the marketplace. Every kilo takes a kilo out. That's a real simple sell. You know, but you know, and people get that. So, but staff retention, that's what I talk about with the employment incentive scheme. You know, how do we keep them? You know, everyone talks about, oh, there's unemployment and all of that. Guys, we all know, let's be real. We're looking for the best. You don't want to employ somebody who doesn't want to be at work. You don't want to employ someone who just doesn't give a toss, or they're there covering their own ass when they should be working on the business. We want our employees working on the business, not just in the business. You know? If we can't talk about that, then what have we become? I'll move on. Oh, back to the employment thing. I got a couple of stories. One is, I have where is it? That's not Vaish. Pippa, she's not in here. One of my engineers, she's a blonde, white Queensland girl. And but most of my people, I have 10 different nationalities working for me. 5 different religions, non-religious, don't care, don't give a damn. You know, but they all applied in Bundaberg here for the same houses. Little Whitey got offered the lot. All the others didn't even get a look in. That's a message. Also, my production manager, wonderful young man, he was selling perfume in Myers when I found him on the Gold Coast. Civil engineer. He was promoted to our production manager by the other staff and supervisors that were working with him. He's an Iranian. He's got as much passion as I have for for what we do and how we do it. And that he was attacked in the street in Childers 3 weeks ago for being, the guy called him a wog. It was a racial attack. What are we doing as a community in the regions? You know, we talk about staff retention. That's my key guy. You know, I can't tell you how pissed I am about that. It's not acceptable, and it's not acceptable for us as a community to stand by and do that. Now, I've brought that up. I brought it up, you know, with some people here in leadership. And it was given very quickly, moved on in the conversation. So that's why I'm bringing it up today. Because it's not acceptable to move it on in the conversation. Everybody, these are human beings. That's my best mate there, Collie. That guy got me out of Fiji in a coup. When Bundaberg was chasing me to arrest me. He put me on a plane without going through customs. But he's also a hell of an engineer. You know, took us, 9 months to get you in the country? But if he was coming to pick fruit, it would have taken, 3 weeks? You know, because some of us are too lazy to get out of bed to go pick fruit. We're in a hard time. You know, he's the only other expert on making rosin in Australia. He worked with me in Fiji where we got that industry up and exporting hundreds of tonnes. Got closed down by a coup, fine. But we haven't given up. Staff retention, big deal. Okay, my other bugbear, compliance. I talked about it at the start. I want to just finish on it. You know, we had a health and safety officer come on. I fired a guy for refusing to comply with health and safety. He was driving a forklift, ours, without a license, without permission, with half a tonne of diesel in an IBC on the front, and it was just everywhere. It wasn't tied down. I waved him down. He stopped. I said, "Mate, what are you doing?" He swore. He left. He then, with his leave, the form that he was given for why he was dismissed, he then put a claim in. He put a complaint into WorkSafe, and that complaint read, "They are using forklifts on that site in an unsafe manner, carting fuel." I'm not joking. The guy told us this. But every complaint must be investigated, and we're in the stage at that point of just moving, as we talked about earlier, from third world to first world. Starting a business, building, looking at that. This guy came through us. He came on the site the day before I'd had 2 politicians on site. Bad move. Because I mentioned, or I didn't mention that, he knew that, and he thought one had been, what's the bloke, Pitt? Apparently he used to be a WorkSafe guy. And he actually had a ticket book. Sorry, I nearly dropped you a bomb. Had a ticket book. Said, I'm going to have to be hard on you guys because I know Pitt, is an investigator. Well, that's a threat, isn't it? Do we want government to be empowering us, or do we want them to be policing us and closing us down before we get started? Wouldn't it be a better policy from government to have a policy of empowerment around work safe, health and safety, about compliance, all the various issues? Come in by all means, do an audit, help us through this from where we are as a startup business to a fully functional business. If you want to give money out to winners, a winner is a business that wants to comply there. Not grants for this, that, or the other. Look, there's a whole big financial sector to go and get money and raise money at. But the hardest thing that we have to do is make sure we're compliant. And guess what? All engineers and all those people that want to provide the services around us, they're going to win too. Because they get the jobs of helping us become compliant. Needs to be a process, come in, do an audit, put together a plan, and an implementation plan and a payment plan on getting from start-up, from woe to go. Otherwise, we're not going to get manufacturing going. Businesses will fail and fail and fail, because these guys have only got to serve you a notice, and you're down. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ray. So many really practical and valuable learnings there. Ray is going to be part of the panel later on. So if you have any questions for Ray, please put them on Slido and we'll be using those later on. With that example in Childers, I think we all have to call it out. If we ever see anything like that, go up to the person and say that is not acceptable. We all have a part to play. Anyway, that's my little soapbox. Is that right? Well, just want to remind you about photography and videography. If you are, we will be taking photos and videos obviously today for Council's social media channels. If you don't want to be involved in that, please go and see Kate and Emily and let them know if you don't want to be part of that. Right, well, let's get on to our next speaker, Dr. Christine Williams. Christine is currently Chair of the Board of Life Sciences Queensland Limited. She took on this role in 2020, having left the Queensland Public Service in 2018 after 22 years in a number of very different senior positions. Christine's final role in the Queensland Public Service was as Queensland Chief Scientist, where she was accountable for science policy and providing strategic guidance across a range of government departments. Her firm belief is that much more can be achieved through working in collaboration than through working alone. And we talked about that a lot yesterday, and it's great to see it's coming up again. She is passionate about the role science can play in improving lives here and abroad, the role citizen scientists can play in collecting information, and the key role that women have in achieving better outcomes in STEM and business. I would have to agree with you there, Christine. Christine is an economist with a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Queensland and a Master of Philosophy from Oxford University. She is an adjunct professor at the University of Queensland, Chair of the Advisory Committee for the ARC Centre of Excellence for Engineered Quantum Systems, immediate past Chair of the Queensland Chapter of the Women in Economics Network, and patron of the Queensland Chapter of the Australian Citizen Science Association. Please welcome Dr. Christine Williams.
And I know why I'm busy. They thought I was retired, but it doesn't seem to be working that way. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the important discussions in Bundaberg. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we meet today, the Turrbal people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge them as the first scientists, innovators, and inventors on this land. The development of the bioeconomy is an important opportunity for Queensland's future economic and social development, and provides an opportunity for the state and relevant stakeholders to work together to drive the development of technologies that will make our lives and environment cleaner, safer, and healthier. As I said, my name is Christine Williams and I'm Chair of Life Sciences Queensland. What is life sciences? People ask me all the time, what are life sciences? And they're basically, we could say it's the science to feed, fuel and heal the people of Queensland and the people of the world. So we're all about a very wide ambit. As you can see there's a lot of relevant words up there for today's and yesterday's discussions. So Life Sciences Queensland is a Queensland peak body representing Queensland life sciences industry. And we offer opportunities for industry stakeholders, from universities to startups to larger industry players, to come together and cooperate to grow their businesses and help capture a dynamic, internationally competitive and sustainable life sciences sector in Queensland. We also work very closely with governments to ensure an appropriate policy environment exists for the life sciences sector to flourish. And we also tell them a lot of stories about you. So anyone who needs to have stories told about their business, let Life Sciences Queensland know. Well, first of all, join the Life Sciences Queensland, and then we'll tell lots of stories about your successes and get people excited in government. Because I think that's one of the things that we do so well, is telling stories. And anyone who's interested, we have a podcast series as well that interviews quite a few of the leading lights. We're really delighted to be here in Queensland to hear and listen and learn about the exciting developments taking place, and recognise that regional Queensland is a really important part of life sciences. People tend to think of life sciences in terms of human health, and I think that in southeast Queensland, that is how they see life sciences. And certainly over the last 18 months, the discovery of vaccines, the discovery of rapid treatments have certainly taken the front pages. But the broader bioeconomy is where we're going to find solutions to the world's problems beyond the immediate threat of COVID-19. So we've talked a lot about the bioeconomy. What is it? Basically, it's production, use, and conservation of biological resources. For me as an economist, it's a different way of looking at the economic system, which actually tries to balance the environment, the social, and the economic. I was always referred to as Kermit when I was in Queensland Treasury because I was too green for them, and I was very happy to move over to the environmental side of things. So for me, discovering the donut economics sort of model, which was mentioned yesterday, where you actually explicitly recognize social and environmental factors. It's not just about economic growth, and that's what this is all about. The bioeconomy is all about growing the economy, sure, but doing it in a way that gives good value jobs to communities and preserves the environment for future generations. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. In today's world, we're seeking net zero carbon emissions as a new holy grail. The scope for innovative solutions in the bioeconomy to assist in that journey appear to be unlimited. We've heard about some of the great stories and innovative solutions being used in this area to address these issues. And biotechnology lies at the heart of many of these solutions. We've heard about using waste streams as a resource to create new value added out of something that either had no value or a negative value in the past. And these products can be food, feed, bioenergy, and that is really at the heart of the bioeconomy, finding value in things that previously didn't have a value and creating things. So I think that remembering that economic growth isn't enough. I mean, it may seem strange to someone who's got 3 economics degrees to say that, but I always felt that focusing on GDP and employment numbers is not enough. We need to be broader than that. So why is it important? The bioeconomy delivers a triple bottom line approach, and solutions need to deliver not only economic, business financial solutions, but they have to be environmentally sustainable. But they also have to look in the societally sustainable modelling solutions as well. So regional Australia, and indeed a lot of non-urban places around the world, have been suffering from population loss over decades. And some communities struggle with this to be able to maintain a viable population. And bioeconomy projects, which are at their heart rely on regional inputs, such as feedstocks, offer a potential lifeline to these communities. Now, I'm not suggesting Bundaberg is in that position. I'm saying I think you've got a very thriving economy here. But I was in Wandoan just recently for the camel races there. Their 2016 census numbers was 556. They have one pub, which the camel races you'd think they'd have a few numbers. No, they only could cater for 70 dinners that night. And we were told we could go to the service station and pick up a steak there. I was saying sitting in a service station having a steak is the low point. So how can you have a viable community? We asked kids to tell us what would make their community better. And they said a bakery. We don't have a bakery. Let's have a pub where we've got someone who's not grumpy running the pub. It was really insights from young people for the best ones. But for them, are there resources nearby that they could transform and make some bioeconomy outputs from there? As we saw yesterday, wastewater treatment plants are almost everywhere, so surely we could be looking to them. So where does innovation fit in? Well, innovation's a bit of my hobby horse, so I'll say that now. I think that we can't do anything without thinking differently. And the bioeconomy is an area where there is enormous potential due to the use of a wide range of sciences enabling in industrial technologies along with local knowledge. But it's about bringing people together. You don't get one single science coming up with innovative solutions. It's where you bring people together. And that's another of my favorite things, is to bring people together with like interests. I am a bit of I say we've been looking at the innovative approaches being taken. And innovative thinking is, and again, that has a whole issue of seeing waste, not as a waste, but as a resource. That's a turn of thinking that is, it's only happened recently. So how do we actually do that? Technology and science are also vital, and that with things that we have in Queensland. And innovating is not only about new products, it's about thinking about new ways. And we were talking last night about people who weren't necessarily great at school, but have got great ideas. And I think that's how you capture those great ideas and make them successful. So we don't badge people as failures because they didn't necessarily finish high school. If they've got a really great idea, how you link them with someone who can actually make the idea real. So that's a challenge I set out to you. And I think we've also seen that crises speed up innovation brilliantly. 18 months ago, we had no vaccine for coronavirus. Nobody thought we could have one. So we've managed to prove that wrong. We've all been vaccinated, I hope. And if not, why not? And rapid testing was restricted to either getting a pinprick for diabetes or for pregnancy. But now we have rapid testing for so many things. A lot of the regulatory hurdles that were mentioned in the previous talk have just been knocked down. The people have seen there's a crisis. So let's use crises to try and fix things. Let's regulate for innovation, not regulate to stop innovation. And I think that we need to push ideas. So why in Queensland? Well, Queensland does have a lot of waste, but we have a lot of other things too. We have a rich biodiversity, we have very good quality feedstocks, and we have skilled labour. We also do have government that are interested in innovation and the bioeconomy. So Life Sciences Queensland hosted the Bioeconomy workshop in Brisbane recently, and I think that it was a huge success from the point of view of raising the profile of the bioeconomy. I think the other thing that we have, which is quite unique, is the Biodiscovery Act. And this is a little bit tangential, but I think it's important that you understand it, that in 2014, the Nagoya Protocol was entered into, and Australia is a signatory to it, which looks at the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the use of genetic resources. So basically, if you're a researcher and you're actually extracting some value from genetic resources in Queensland and then go on and commercialise that, you need to be aware of the fact that there are processes to go through before you are actually able to export that product now. So Queensland went through that legislative change and has now allowed for that, and we have a process which can go through. That does not exist in other states. So although it may seem as a bit of a hurdle, it's actually a hurdle which will help you access international markets. And I guess the first exciting project that was developed under these new arrangements is a partnership between University of Queensland and the Jalangi people, Aboriginal Corporation, which involves the extract of nanofibers from Spinifex. Now, Spinifex is a kind of prickly thing. One wouldn't think it would be something that you would use in surgical gloves, condoms, also interestingly on road surfacing. But they've actually got nanofibers which actually increase as an additive, increases the flexibility of surfaces and makes it very possible to get very, very thin but very strong surfaces. And Spinifex grasses cover 30% of the continent. So do we now have a resource with a different value because we've found some way to use it? I think so. We've heard about how municipal waste can be used to create green energy, and about Nev House using recycled plastics to build rapidly deployable housing. Warm water, which is used as an offshoot for different industrial processes, being used rather than as a problem. I mean, what you do with warm water, you have to let it cool, but instead we're using it to make algae, which can then go on and be used for fuel or for other high-value products. And it wouldn't be right if I wasn't in Bundaberg and didn't talk about sugar. So obviously we have to talk about sugar, and bagasse, everyone knows it is an incredibly valuable resource now. Again, it used to be looked at as a byproduct that was a problem, but it's now being used, obviously, to generate power for the millers themselves. But they're looking at ways how to make it a valuable animal feed to augment animal supplements. And the next time you have a takeaway, it could actually have been made out of sugar bagasse. So the Biopack is making sugarcane-based takeaway containers. So I'm going to finish at that because I think we've got a bit of time to catch up. And thank you all for letting me come and talk to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christine Williams. Well, our next speaker is Dr. Clive Keenan, Managing Director of Wide Bay Pacific Proprietary Limited, which has current seaweed aquaculture projects in the Solomon Islands as well as in Bundaberg at the Qualitas Bio Hub. Wide Bay Pacific has developed a number of partnerships and projects which will establish the Wide Bay as a focus of activities in the Oceania region for farming, processing and production of a range of algae-derived products. Clive is an experienced principal agriculture scientist working for DAF Queensland for 14 years with over 50 publications on a wide variety of topics. He has worked in the aquaculture industry for the past 21 years, including serving as Director, Aquaculture Development for Phillips Foods Inc. in USA, working in the Philippines and Indonesia, as well as the Prawn Farm Manager and Aquaculture Development Consultant in Bundaberg. Please welcome Dr. Clive Keenan.
Thanks very much, and it's been a fascinating conference, and it was a stroke of genius to coincide this with the COP26 meeting. I don't know if it was done on purpose or if it was, yeah, because we've got all these important people talking about important things over there, and here we are talking about the most important thing. Okay. By the end of this talk, I'm hoping I've convinced you that there is a role for aquaculture to complete the circle in the carbon bioeconomy. Okay, how did I become involved in this? Last year I inspected the BioHub and recognised the potential of the site to demonstrate carbon capture using microalgae. It had all the ingredients. It had seawater, sunlight, subtropical climate, and CO2, as well as nutrients, power, labs, and tanks. Everything that we need. And at that time, I thought I was semi-retired, but then I ran into Malcolm, and we decided to start a business. And it hasn't been going very long. Okay, next slide. This one. No. Okay. Right, okay, thanks. I'm going to start off really simple because there's a huge range of people in the audience, from the Queensland's chief scientist to people that probably don't know a lot about biology. The nature's biodegrading pathways, it's actually pretty simple. There's aerobic digestion of agricultural waste, which is basically composting. And the outputs are water, CO2 to the atmosphere, biomass and nutrients. This has been going on for millions of years. The problem at the moment is that plants can't keep up with the CO2 that's being emitted in the atmosphere. The plants on land and in the water. So then we come to anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion is conducted under more controlled conditions, or can be, and the outputs are biogas, which we heard about yesterday, biomass, nutrients, and also water. I forgot to put that in. So the main constituents of biogas are methane and carbon dioxide. About 60-40 ratio, which we learnt yesterday was the ideal ratio for inputting into the recarbon hydrogen generators. There's also a bit of stuff in there that needs to be removed to make it a useful gas. Biogas is a valuable and useful resource. It's often harvested from landfills. Otherwise, it's released in the atmosphere, contributing greenhouse gases which are responsible for global warming. And just today, we learnt that Australia didn't sign up to the methane pledge at COP26. So, anaerobic digestion of biogas can be done under controlled conditions in a closed container to capture the biogas. And if the biogas is to be used in a methane in the gas distribution network, it needs to remove the carbon dioxide, and the process is that we can use the CO2 to stimulate algal growth and reduce production costs. Other sources of clean CO2 are alcohol fermentation and flue gases from burning fossil fuels, or in fact gas from the methane distribution network, which is a much cleaner source of carbon dioxide. And the bottom line for us is that a tonne of CO2 will produce approximately 500 kilos of microalgae. In fact, the ratio can be 1 to 6, so it can be about 600 kilos. So it's a real sink for carbon dioxide. You note the date on this, 26th of October, very recent date, a bit of a news item about Young Henry's Craft Brewery. I was speaking with Jack about this yesterday. He said he saw a plant doing this in the United States in 2007 next to a brewery. So it's not new, but for Young Henry's it was back there 5 years ago. Young Henry's set up an algae plant. It's not a big one. It has a 400-litre bioreactor in it, which is this one here. That thing, it's got algae in it. And what they are thinking of doing is along the lines of us, that they are investigating if microalgae can reduce methane emissions by producing a feed for cattle and sheep. That's their latest take on it. Just for reference, the CO2 from fermentation of just one pack of beer takes a tree 2 full days to absorb. And also, the 400-litre bioreactor produces as much oxygen as 1 hectare of Australian forest. So I want you to remember that 400 litres is equivalent to 1 hectare of forest. Okay. We are proposing to grow microalgae using a well-established bivalve hatchery technology. It's about 50 years old, this technology. And it's interesting because there's so many ways of growing algae in bioreactors. But this particular one was designed to be simple, semi-automated and foolproof. Well, you know, I suppose it depends on who's operating it. But it provides a continuous production system using bag culture for 4 months, which is quite a long time without cleaning. And it does this by using pasteurised seawater to kill the bugs before they get into the system, and sterilisation once a week of the input lines using steam. Ultrafilters down to 0.5 micron would also be suitable as to pasteurise the seawater. And there's a heat, if you pasteurise the seawater, there's a heat scavenger that heats up the water going into it, so it's pretty economical. The interesting one about this is it provides the ability to scale up into ponds very easily, depending on the availability of land and inputs, including carbon dioxide for injection into the pond water. And I'll just show you some photos of the system. This is a 18 bag system. Each bag is about 4,000 litres, so it's equivalent to 10 hectares of forest, if you remember what I said before. And this is a close-up of the bags. In this particular hatchery, which is in South Australia, they grow 4 species of algae, and not the one that we're targeting. But the one that we are targeting, which is a Nanochloropsis, which has been used in aquaculture for 50 years to actually grow rotifers, which are fed to fish, is the one we're targeting. But this system can be used for Nanochloropsis. They're air bubbles that travel up the bag. So presumably they're oxygen coming out of the algae, and they'll be released to the atmosphere. And they cause there's no huge turbulence in these bags, but the air bubbles moving up the bags create its own turbulence. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about pond production of algae. I went to the University of Queensland. Professor Pearshank has a demonstration farm that deploys new cost-saving technologies to produce food, feed, nutraceuticals or biodiesel from microalgae. The algae energy farm that he created was officially opened on the 19th of August in 2014. It's an off-grid 250,000 litre demonstration module that utilises in-house expertise to demonstrate industrial-scale, low-cost cultivation, harvesting and drying technologies tailored for microalgae production. Through continued optimisation of the production process at the Pinjarra Schenck Lab, are currently yielding an estimated 600 barrels of biodiesel and 50 tonnes of algae biomass per hectare per year. So, of particular relevance is his statement that a combination of the module with anaerobic digestion will allow fertiliser recycling for operation as a zero-input algae energy farm. So this is where it starts to, the linkage between the biogas and the algae farm starts. Okay, the Woods Group in Goondiwindi is the first to commercially develop this technology for their feedstock and food products business. And here's a fairly recent article covered by the ABC. This is 16th of June last year. This is in Gundawindi, and they grow the Nanochlorops, and this is using bore water, and it's for basically incorporation into animal feeds, but recently they've developed a new product which is going into the human, for human feed, which is where the real money is, I suppose. You'll notice here that it's 42.1% protein and has a very high fat or oil content. Total omega-3 fatty acids, which are the really valuable ones, 5.6 or almost 6%. The protein, the Nanochlorops protein, has a well-balanced amino acid profile, has all the essential and branch chain amino acids, and it's actually very similar to the amino acid profile of beef. I've got 2 slides. Okay, next one. This is the Qualitas Health Algae Farm in Columbus, New Mexico, USA. It's 150 hectares. This farm was actually developed in the United States. They've had a massive government funding program for biodiesel production, and it has stimulated a lot of research in the US. And this farm was built when the price of oil was going through the roof with government funding. Then when the price of oil collapsed, so did the business. But it is now been taken over by Qualitas Health for for the production is for human consumption. This 150 acres, and on their website they say it's equivalent to 45,000 acres of peas. The algae is 300 times more productive than growing peas. Okay. This is a close-up of the ponds. It's very simple. They're very shallow. They run at about 30 centimetres. And there's a paddle wheel, very low input paddle wheel, just keeping the pond stirring. And you'll see here there's nutrient inputs, and in fact the most expensive part of the inputs into this farm is actually the carbon dioxide, because this farm is 1,500 kilometres inland on the border of New Mexico and Mexico, I think. It's a long way inland. It uses bore water, which is fairly sterile. The CO2 increases the growth rate by 4 to 5 times. And it costs about $2 a kilo to bring in the liquefied carbon dioxide into this facility to make the algae grow. So you can see why we're so interested in the BioHub site, because it is the carbon dioxide is right there, either coming from the biogas, cleaning up the biogas, or, as you heard yesterday, from the recarbon hydrogen production system. It's food-grade carbon dioxide that's coming out of there. Right, and finally, actually I had 3 slides, sorry. This is the many uses of microalgae. So it is one of the most primitive plants on Earth. It's been living for hundreds of millions, thousands of millions of years, and it has all the essential chemicals to basically create a lot of replace a lot of the biochemicals or the chemicals used in the petroleum industry. There's one important line that isn't in there, going straight from fermentation to the algae production ponds, which is the carbon dioxide from fermentation of alcohol. And there's a lot of that in Bundaberg, at Bundy Rum. I'm not sure what they do with their carbon dioxide, but if we can take it off them, we'd be happy to do that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clive Keenan. Well, our next guest speaker is Jack Milbank, Director of Novum Life Sciences Biofilm, who is also part of the AgTech Hub at Bargara. Jack has worked in applied science across agriculture, IT, beverages, hospitality, animal genetics, synthetic biology, and wholesale distribution for over 20 years. Based in Bargara, Jack is involved to varying degrees in a network of companies, including Hortus, Biofilm, Ballistic, Heartwood and AgPro, across Australia, Singapore, Japan, USA and Southern Africa. Jack is a passionate triathlete, Thule cattle producer, beer fan, and father of 3 beautiful daughters. From manufacturing biotic hydro mulch to gluten removal enzymes to bioinsecticides for nematode control in sweet potatoes, biology presents some incredible options for better management of difficult problems. Jack sees the Bundaberg bioeconomy as a great hub for the development of naturally innovative solutions for agriculture, but sees a need for more economically viable, modular and collaborative pilot projects to be established with better access to seed capital for the region's businesses to compete on a global stage. Please welcome Jack Milbank.
Thanks for the welcome, and morning everybody. I know I'm between you and a cup of coffee, so I'll try and keep it interesting. And I suppose it's been great to hear over the last day and a half a lot of focus on energy, and I want to bring a bit of diversity to the discussion. And I suppose my involvement in this region has been across a number of different avenues, from primarily an agricultural base, but we've recently moved to a much broader life science portfolio, which we conducted a merger of our own companies. And yeah, I just want to take you through some of the interesting points, and my aim is to just provide some thought-provoking ideas and to stimulate discussion so that over tea and lunch you've got more things to discuss and the opportunities present themselves. As many of you know, I'm very passionate about food production and beverage production, and the biological assets and intellectual property that support food production. And so we look at things through different lenses at times, and but I want to take you through some of the ways in which we evaluate establishing businesses. I suppose 2020 was a taking stock year for me, 2021. So a little bit of background, I grew up in Zimbabwe in a sort of a landlocked Africa on the middle of a cattle property, and so we farmed cattle and game, and I didn't anticipate moving to Australia at all. The plan was to come get a degree, go back and run horseback safaris on a game farm in the middle of Africa, but things turned out differently. And so I suppose we set up, I worked for Ausveg, so we were doing industry development of research and development funds, so deployment of vegetable levy money into research projects in Northern Australia. I did that for a couple of years, and that was sort of the only job I had, actually. I left university, worked for somebody else for 2 years and said, bugger this, and started my own companies. And haven't stopped. So from when I was 25, I arrived at university with a suitcase and was told not to come home. So I basically just had to start from scratch. And anyway, we're now 20 years later. I thought, okay, let's just stop and take a breath. And so we reorganized our sort of involvement in a few companies and reprioritized where we, the strategic direction and what we wanted to do. And it's amazing when you do that. I'd forgotten what I'd wanted to do. I'd just been on the treadmill, just going hard and doing things. And it sort of dawned on me, and I'll take you through some of the reasoning for it in a second. But so we formed, I actually purchased CropTech, which was an original Bundaberg business established by John and Penny Hall in the mid-'80s. So I bought that off John Deere in 2009. We then set up Biofilm Crop Protection as the first biofungicide manufacturer, linking into some of the similar stories. My wife and I were pest and disease, bug checkers, wandering through the tomato fields of Bundaberg with a bit of bulldog and lanate and endosulfan getting sprayed around, and I thought, this is not what I want to be feeding my kids. And so we investigated into development of bacteria to control, biology to control problems. We at the time were releasing beneficial insects, using IPM to control insects, and then at that point there was severe outbreaks of yellow leaf curl virus in tomatoes, and so we were looking at ways of controlling bacteria that affects tomato production. And so I went looking for other bacteria that would be stronger than the one causing the problem. And so that got us into biofermentation. And so we've been in this for a very long time now, sort of 9 years. We've got a portfolio of about 40 different organisms. We've got a 5,000-litre bioreactor that we manufacture on using evacuated solar tubes in a closed-loop system. So we're energy neutral. We capture rainwater. We've got a reverse osmosis process. So we have zero waste and zero energy. And so we've been doing this since 2013. We then set up Bagara Brewing Company as a brewery with that similar mindset, where we captured rainwater, and that was foundation to have a zero circular economy. And I was fortunate I did a Nuffield scholarship in 2006, and I was looking at globally competitive horticultural production, processing, marketing, using renewable energy as the backbone of the supply chain with a net benefit on regional environments and economies. So for me, I've been looking at circular economies since the beginning, and I don't think of doing business in any other way. For me, it's about expanding the connectivity between businesses and how they contribute to one another and building a network. So we're great. We have a good team of employees now, but I'm more interested in developing partnerships with independent businesses. So we've got a much bigger network of independent agronomists, advisors, vets, experts, because as we know, as soon as people leave university, they either tend to go down a career path, a corporate career path, or if they've got their own ambitions, they then start their own companies. And so we end up having a lot of people that work for us for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then go on and start their own agronomy consultancy or work with other clients. And all of those people continue to be our customers 20 years later. So we work closely with a number of universities, and that just gives us fantastic access to ongoing, as applied scientists, we take research and we apply it to farms. So we're the intermediary that underpins the deployment of research outcomes. So I suppose, in summary, what I'm wanting to demonstrate to you is the connection of the various levels of. So Hortus is our service business. So it's an NATA, an ASPAC accredited laboratory with microbiology capability. We've just bought a new Thermo Fisher ICP, so we can do part per billion analyses on any substance. And, I suppose that's across soil, sap, water, a range of things. And then biofilm is our inoculant and microbial manufacturing division. So we're quite involved in providing alternatives to synthetic fertilizers. So we produce azospirillum, azotobacter, which are both nitrogen-fixing bacteria that are not reliant on legumes. So as a replacement in reef-sensitive production systems, we would rather use biology to extract nutrients that are already there that farmers have been applying to soil for 200 years. Well, let's just extract that and make it more usable to plants. So we use Bacillus amelia-Q-liquefaciens as a phosphate solubilizing bacteria. And then we have entomopathogenic fungi that we use to parasitize pests within either pasture systems or horticultural systems. We believe there's, and have seen there's huge growth for certified organic products, and it's not being driven by anyone, saying I want to be organic. It's been driven by consumers demanding organic products at the supermarkets, which then is forcing the larger suppliers of fruit and vegetables to develop an organic line to continue supply to the supermarkets. And then in order to do that, they can come to us and go, we're a big corn, bean, whatever supplier, but we now have to develop up organic production systems. Can you help us? And so we then start replacing one at a time their synthetic biocontrols or fertilizers with organic replacements, so that they then can provide a higher margin, consistent supply of organic certified product to the supermarkets. So obviously there's been a lot of noise around soil carbon, and obviously being an agronomist, we've looked at soil science for many, many years. So in the gas project, I did the soil management plan and a soil survey for the GLNG project in June to Gladstone, where we took soil tests every kilometre down to 2 metres for 400 kilometres. So I personally had land cruisers collecting soils, classifying them, generating the results, the recommendations of how much gypsum to stabilize the sodic base beneath the pipelines. But now with carbon, there is another realm, and I think it's only just dawning on people the value and importance of soil carbon by 2030, and then by 2050. It's a pretty big space, and we test an awful lot of soil, and we've got a lot of historical carbon test results, and we I suppose want to play a big part in the management of that data that underpins verification of management practices on farm to sequester more carbon and improve productive output of that orchard or that farm. And so measurement of all of those soil tests and the SOPs led us into the data world. And so last year we spun off our own software division and called it AgPro. Well, it's called LexiTech after my daughter. So it's headquartered in Singapore. And so LexiTech is our, I suppose, global headquarters, and AgPro technology is our ag platform that manages all of the data around agriculture. And so we have licensees now. So Novum and Hortus Analytical in Bundy is one of the Australian licensees. We work with Pioneer in Japan, and then we have other licenses in South Africa, Chile, and America. But that is around the auto-generation of nutrient budgets, so N&P budgets, and I think we're in a very strong position given the compliance required for reef. The reef legislation forces us to adopt best practice, and that we can now export that intellectual property in the form of systems, procedures, data connectivity, and access to agricultural systems everywhere else in the world. And obviously the use of biology to sequester more carbon I still think it's an oversimplification. There's going to be a healthy soil system which will grow the ability for it to retain, have a higher cation exchange capacity and an ability to sequester more carbon. And there's going to be multiple organisms. It's just the way in which the venture capital world and raising capital works. You know, everybody puts their hat on or their bets on one horse, and you've got to be able to define it. But it's a far broader story. So to touch on some of the biological opportunities, so I suppose we're at currently focused on bioremediation of soil. So whether it's increased fertility, whether it's bioremediation, removal of heavy metals or contaminants from mine sites or things like that, activation and value addition to composts. So we're doing a lot of work at the moment on prebiotic microbiome priming, so determination of what facilitates far better nutrient utilization by livestock. And then obviously sort of replacement of fungicides in cropping, so biofungicidal activity in cropping. So we obviously then through the service delivery, we offer quite an extensive DNA and pathogen diagnosis service for producers all around the country. So they send their samples, we isolate, get a pure culture, sequence it, and then start to do challenge plating on our library of organisms as to what might work to control some of those pathogens. In enhancing biomethane recovery and consistency in the way a deployed, known, controlled environment of biology that might enhance recovery of specific compounds as opposed to allowing nature to take its course. We enhance it by the provision of an optimized population, so it might be 10 to the 9 CFUs per mil of a specific organism that it's going to extract specific metabolites out of the feedstock. Yeah, and then obviously we do a little bit of enzyme production, so all the enzymes begin with as an excretion from different organisms, and then the downstream filtration of those. So we're working with glutenase reduction and manufacturing of an ingredient for the addition to flour, so that it can be provided as a gluten-free flour to bakers. Yeah, and there's hydromulch I'll touch on. It's quite a long process with binding agents, but ideally what we're looking to do is regain access to that baked layer of soil beneath the macadamia tree where the harvesters go over. If we can apply a bonded fiber matrix hydromulch that's in 2-layer process that's biofortified, then harvesters can go over, the soil will recover underneath it, but we still have a nice harvestable bed on top of the hydromulch. And then beer, we all know about that, that's the most fun one. And babies is our latest one, and there's going to be some raised eyebrows, but I'll explain this in a second. So enzymes, so we have good scientists that work for us, but we look at each enzyme produced by which organism and then understand what feature or function that enzyme has, and whether it breaks down starch, does it, a chitinase, so there's fantastic opportunities with crab shell. There's so many opportunities of not just the organism, but the enzymes that those organisms produce for reactions to occur, to develop. And so there's more ideas and opportunities here than I've got to fulfill in a lifetime. So this is why we need so many more credible, funded pilot-scale projects to really turn this into a center of innovation in the bioeconomy, and not just 1, 2, 3, 4 key projects. There's a plethora, and we need to get cracking on it, because otherwise other places are going to overtake us. So as I said, yeah, we've been doing this for a few years now. I want to touch briefly on livestock. So we've only been back in this in the last 12 months. So back to the start, I've forgotten what I wanted to do. When I was a kid, I wanted to have a bull stud. And so I suddenly realized, holy cow, I forgot, that's what I wanted. So we then had some ability to do it. So we bought a nice property that's got 20 acres of mangroves, of which I want to seed some microalgae, and I think it's fantastic what the algae guys are doing, because for reduction of methane, we've obviously the likes of Future Feed and Aspergillus production in this area. There's huge potential in that, and particularly for enhancement of both grass-fed and livestock-fed animals, and for growth as well as reproductive capacity. out of time a bit, but we all sort of know what's required to scale up. But I want to touch on these couple of slides quickly. So this is sort of scale up. In the bioeconomy, we're basically replicating organisms. And whether we start with a bacteria, whether we start with an atom, a compound, or it's replication is what we're sort of doing. So a base level biostimulants, $5 a litre. A biocontrol might be $10 a litre. An enzyme maybe $20 a litre. So as you sort of go down, the price goes up. To make it 500 grand a year revenue, you're looking at 100,000 litres of a biostimulant, 50,000 litres of biocontrol product, or 25,000 litres of enzyme. And generally, as you scale, you tend to get a bit more efficient. But interesting, your investment, goes up quite significantly. The return, it's okay. You've got to get big, and there's quite a long lead time, and there's some issues with it. And that's because it's capital intensive. When you buy those assets, they depreciate. And there's a business case that's quite difficult to explain. So when we look at a cow, most people would look at that and envisage a big steaming pile of crap that comes out the other side. Whereas I look at with the methane that's coming out, it's a little bioreactor on its own that's just, we don't have to process anything, it eats grass. And I can leave it right there and build the soil biology. That grass goes in. What's the highest value thing that we can replicate? Well, at the moment, many of you may have seen some of the, there is about a 25,000 head shortage of cattle in Australia because of 7-8 years of drought. So that's why bulls are worth $200,000 each. So we're in the game now of embryo production. So we're working with embryologists, and we're flushing embryos out of pedigree heifers, merging them with our genetics, and then selling embryos around the world. The thing about that is the smaller the better. It's attention to detail, its ability to manage it carefully, and the more efficient, the bigger you get, the less efficient you become, because you start, you're rushing through the system. Where you've got smaller scale, tighter control, more attention to detail with nutrition, and the higher the value and the scarcity of the things that you're providing. So in that instance, you get a much better return on investment. So we've said about we're Australia's newest cattle breed. So I'm the one and only registered, so under ARCBA, the Australian registered cattle breed. So we own all the Thule genetics, we register them, we manage the animals, we then coordinate globally the supply, and no more is available because CSIRO bought these genetics in at vast expense to Australia, and like all good research, no one picked it up and did anything with it. So I came along and saw it, and it actually was picked up, but as a part of a composite herd, and then certain acquisitions occurred, and the Thule nucleus herd was killed, and there was 43 purebred animals left, and so we did a deal, and we now manage the entire Thule genome. So we're working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We've sequenced all of our animals, and we're now, I suppose, looking for specific locations on that genome for TB resistance genes that has massive implications for the Gates Foundation if they find a tuberculosis resistance gene that will come off our Thule genetics, which is 5,000 years of continuous lineage, which is why it's a pretty cool project to be working on. And obviously, CSIRO brought it into Australia because it's heat tolerant and we're a desert, and makes sense. So just to sum up, I suppose for success in this bioeconomy space, you need unique genetics, you need a feedstock, you need to consider your bioreactor design, and then you need data to support the value of the finished product, and then procedures and tools to monitor the performance and then replicate your success. Obviously, must fulfill the need, must achieve market acceptance at the quality and quantity able to consistently replicate that process, need to be able to effectively educate the market on the unique value proposition that you're presenting, and there needs to be availability of expertise to assist it in its scale. And I think Bundaberg has a lot of that, and the ability to fulfill a lot of these things, and the value of the assets, products and processes should appreciate over time, not depreciate. So thank you very much. If AgPro's up and running out of Singapore now, our cattle, I haven't shared many photos of things, but that's what social media is for. So we're on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn for Thule for our cattle, AgPro for our digital technology and systems, and then Novum Life Sciences for all our biology and analytical services, and look forward to having a chat with you guys over tea. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jack Milbank. What fantastic innovations happening in our region. Well, it's morning tea time. We'll need to be back in the room by 11:30, so if you could actually go and get something, come back in at your leisure. We've still got a lot to get through, and we've got to get on that bus for the site tours a little bit later. So make your way out for morning tea. If you haven't filled out the poll yet on Slido, please do that. We're going to be having a word cloud a little bit later as well on the one thing that the conference means to you. Describe it in a word, what you've learnt, what's been great about it. We'll get that up soon. Thanks everyone. Enjoy morning tea. We'll see you back in here at 11:30. Extensive industry experience, Cameron has acquired 3 master's degrees in construction management, entrepreneurship and innovation, and an MBA. He's been pretty busy. He was the winner of the Fillion Award for Entrepreneurial Excellence when studying in Switzerland, and also was granted the Circular Economy Award for winning the Australian Technologies competition in 2019. Cameron is passionate to create solutions for a sustainable future with a focus on circular procurement, clean tech, and reducing the waste in the construction and manufacturing industries. Gentlemen, are we right to get Cameron online?
Hi everyone. Thank you very much for your time. My name's Cameron McKenzie. I'm from Aspire. I'm going to do things a little bit different at the moment. I have got a slide deck, but what I might do is I might share it with Emily and the team after the presentation. There's reasons for that, purely because I'm also sitting in Hong Kong at the moment, and there's also sometimes we have issues with sharing documents and information. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So so I thought I'll just have a bit of a chat and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing and what we're doing with our platform. So a little bit about it is basically what Aspire is. It's a marketplace for businesses of any size to transact and exchange resources or excess commodities as a cost sharing exercise or to save money. So what we do is we work with a lot of local governments and state government. In Queensland, we work with Moreton Bay, I think it's Logan, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Noosa and Redlands. And what we do is we work with them to engage their businesses to build a circular economy so they can share excess resources and waste products. What I'll do is I'll give you a little bit of example of how it works. So a prime example is we had a business in Victoria that had about 20 odd tons of agricultural products that would normally end up straight in the landfill. And what we did is they listed those products onto Aspire. And what we actually did is we found a business to take that as a direct feedstock rather than going to landfill. So off the back of that, we saved the supply side a lot of money from not having to actually send those items to landfill. And what we did is on the demand side, is we actually found a free feedstock for them. They had to pay for the transportation to pick it up. But end of the day, what we did is we connect these businesses to create more sustainable outcomes and longevity to these business communities. So far, we have over, I think it's 850 odd businesses in Australia at the moment that transact. We divert over 45,000 tonnes from products from landfill. Again, it's nothing to sneeze at. And what we also do is we have over 200 different types of commodities that can get exchanged. So it can be anything from construction products to timber, to furniture, to agricultural products. We have plastics. We have a lot of pallets that get exchanged on the platform. And what we do is we bring these partners together and these businesses to exchange these products rather than send them to landfill. And we're super proud to be on this webinar today and working with Bundaberg and the wider Bay Area to see what we can do for the local economy. We have lots of farmers and a lot of retail as well as manufacturing that use the platform in the southern states, because we originally came from Victoria. And off the back of that too, we also came from CSIRO and Data 61. So they actually built the platform over several years, and after a successful pilot program, it switched into commercial operations. And from there, we've been expanding across the country, which we've been doing quite well. We're in Tasmania, Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, and we're about to deliver and take off in Perth, which is great. One of the things about Aspire, again, that makes it quite an easy sort of platform is we actually sit in the cloud. So there's no software or software or hardware you need to download or anything like that. All you really need is a email, and you're off to go. And we can organise and help businesses obviously exchange these products rather than send them to landfill. As I sort of spoke about, is I'm actually sitting in Hong Kong at the moment. So back in 2019, we won Australian Technologies competition, and with that, two of the judges, they work for a big organisation over in Hong Kong, and they asked if we could bring the software over here. And I've been here for the last probably 7 months now, getting the platform ready to develop and to launch. So there's a lot of noise sort of going to come in at the moment when it comes to circular economy and sustainability. And I know there's the COP26 going on at the moment, and there's been some pretty ambitious targets that have been set by the federal government as well as global governments. And I think that basically by using a platform like Aspire, we can help reduce those carbon impacts and reduce everyone sort of going to net zero. Two of the key features that we've got in Aspire that make it, again, quite attractive is we can actually measure Scope 3 embodied carbon measurement. So a lot of organisations do a lot regarding the Scope 1 and Scope 2. And what we do is we've got a tool in Aspire that measures every item that gets exchanged, and it also gives you an embodied carbon measurement which is ISO certified. So a lot of the organisations, depending on the level that they're at, some of them, like the big end of town, they really need to sort of start hitting these objectives. And we've got the smaller end of town that really sort of like to use it for the sort of cost-saving measures. I'm not quite sure if everyone's aware, but I think about 80 or even more, I think about 95% of the local governments in Australia hit a climate crisis about 2 years ago. And one of the sort of directions from that is obviously to hit some decarbonisation targets, but it's also about helping the businesses in the community to hit these targets too. And what we do is we work a lot with LGAs to engage their businesses and the residents within that area to help with those targets. I think back in at the start of the year, I think the federal government they were going to bring in a mandate of percentage of recycled content in every procurement process that they do. And one of the things that we've been sort of speaking with the federal government about is how we can sort of use Aspire to leverage that impact for them. And that's one of the main things as we're trying to do as we sort of build Aspire into the ecosystem, is to help these businesses be more sustainable, make more real life choices, and also to help them thicken their wallets in any way they can. I'll give you another prime example how sort of Aspire works. Basically, so we had a business in Victoria that was starting to get in a lot of trouble. I think it was pre-COVID, or just when COVID was kicking off. When it come to their supply chain, they were trying to import things from overseas, and they just couldn't happen. As you know, it was everything sort of went into lockdown. Australia was pretty tough with that. But basically, through the platform, we could actually find a free feedstock. I think it was about 2 kilometres away from where they were based. And what it was like, I think it was majority of it was like a timber product which they were importing, which they actually had another supplier on the platform that were actually costing them a lot of money to throw those items out in a skip per week. And by matching them on the platform, we could actually find those sustainable end of life products, and that collaboration is still going today, which again, it's amazing sort of tool to help these businesses be more sustainable. One of the another sort of a great sort of initiative we've got on the platform is we've got, I think there's about 4 or 5 businesses that collect all the polystyrene that sort of get listed on the platform. A lot of it, as you know, polystyrene is can be a pain in the backside. It breaks up, it's very light, it blows around yards. A lot of transfer stations hate it, absolutely hate it. But what we do is we've got businesses on the platform that when another business sort of lists those items, that they can come and collect them directly and normally for free. A lot of people just want to get rid of these products, and what we do is we help these businesses, again, be more sustainable, but also, you know, find these connections through a digital platform. And we love working with sort of LGAs in any sort of region, rural or city, purely because it's all about how they can engage their local communities. We've just recently launched in regional Victoria in Ballarat and Bendigo, again, and they're very sort of like a similar sort of area to sort of the Bundaberg area. That you know, they're regional, but you know, they're very important to building the community and helping the localized businesses as things you know, they get done a lot closer to home these days. So, but what I'd like to do is, again, is like, thank you very much for your time. What I'll do is I've got a deck here that I'll share with Lachlan and Emily, and feel free to have a bit of a look at what we're doing. And there's a QR code in one of the pages. So if you feel like joining Aspire, just pick up your phone, hit that QR code, and you'll go straight through to our onboarding process. And we'd love to have you know, Bundaberg and the wider Bay Area, you know, join the Aspire community, because it's only going to get bigger. And we're a tool where we can save you time and money on pretty much every resource that come in and out of your business. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I'll catch you later. Thank you.
Can we please thank Cameron McKenzie from Aspire? Fantastic once again to see that collaboration in action. Our next guest speaker is Nathan Freeman, Head of Planning, Infrastructure and Projects at Greensill Farming, which includes Green Solutions Wide Bay as part of his portfolio. Greensill Farming Group are leading the way in environmental and sustainable farming practices as one of the region's largest growers of sugarcane and sweet potatoes. From humble beginnings, the Greensill family have built a legacy spanning generations that continues to develop, research and invest in agriculture. Nathan's previous roles include consultant town planner with Insight SJC for 16 years, prior to joining Greensill Farming in 2020. Nathan is also president of the Bundaberg branch of the Urban Development Institute of Australia, board member for a number of not-for-profit organisations in the Wide Bay Burnett region, registered planner with the Planning Institute of Australia, and auxiliary firefighter with Queensland Fire and Emergency Services at the Bundaberg station. And he forgot to mention Citizen of the Year at this year's Australia Day Awards. Please welcome Nathan Freeman.
Thanks, Trish. I knew I wouldn't get away with that one. All right, I might pinch this because I like to walk around a lot. Welcome, everybody. As Trish mentioned, I'm Head of Planning, Infrastructure and Projects with Greensill Farming. Very exciting part of the business, which I'm here to talk to you about today, is Green Solutions Wide Bay. So Green Solutions Wide Bay is our newest venture in the business. It's a fully green waste recyclable facility. So we turn green waste into compost and other products. So I'll just give you a quick run through on that today. And for those lucky enough today that are doing the bus tours, you'll end up at our facility. And I won't take too much away. You'll get a little bit out there today as well. So we'll run through that. So Greensill Farming, I thought I'd just give you a bit of background on the company itself. We're 100% family owned, been third generation farming in this area since 1945. So we've just clicked over our 75 years, and we have 3,000 hectares of farmland across the Bundaberg and Wide Bay region. So quite a big area. We do, if you ever get down towards the coast, hanging off the side of the hummock, that nice red soil down there, a lot of that stuff is all under our production. We've got a farm over at Oakwood, and then we've also got one over, we've got multiple farms over at Wallaville as well. So what do we grow? We grow sweet potatoes, sugarcane, peanuts. We have a civil construction team, so we've got quite a large development team. We run around with 70-tonne to 30-tonne excavators. We've got plenty of scrapers. So we've got a lot of equipment that we help to build our farms. We've also do farm redevelopment, and we've got an in-house manufacturing capability. So we do a lot of our own building of pump sheds, pump infrastructure, a lot of our sort of implements and things like that as well, we also manufacture in-house. The team that we employ here locally is over 100, and we have between 30 to 40 seasonal workers during those peak summer months. So we get quite a large team, but a fair chunk of them are local. Some of our supply chain and our partners, we supply sweet potatoes with a company called Sweet Potatoes Australia, so we form part of that. We are the largest supplier of sweet potatoes in Australia. We supply to Coles, Woolworths, Aldi. We also supplied now to a company called Simplot, which is down in Tasmania. The first time now that we've manufactured sweet potato here in Australia, turned them into chips and put them out there. So if you buy your bird's eyes and all those sort of sweet potatoes in the supermarket, that's now manufactured here in Australia. Previously we sent them overseas, they were put into bags and then we bought them back. So really exciting, that part of the business. With our hay crops, we also supply it to Orico, which you'll go at this afternoon. I think Paul's up next. And we're also one of the largest suppliers of peanuts to Bega. So Bega peanut butter, don't buy the craft stuff, buy the Bega stuff. And also ISIS sugar, we obviously have out Wallaville. We have a large broad hectare farm out there and we send a lot of our sugar across to ISIS. So really good partners. So one of the things, and the reason why I mention that today is, as you can see, we deal with some really big companies, and the one thing that they're always chasing is quality, and they're also wanting to know more and more where their product comes from. So we've got a really strict compliance within the business as to how we deal with that product. They have a strict compliance at their end as to the quality we provide. So we need to trace that through the whole process, and that goes right through to our compost stage. Part of the business we really focus on is that farm design. We want to make sure that the farm works for our needs and our cropping needs. We also look at zero health and carbon, soil health and carbon, and zero waste. So they're the two really high sections we focus on. And sustainable water. Usage of water is really massive in the business. Anything that enters our site, we don't want to leave the site. So we try and utilise it as much as we can. Technology and automation, and then farm machinery and equipment. So where did all this come from? Where was the inspiration around the Green Solution site? It actually came from a trip to San Francisco. So a group of local farmers shot overseas. We're going through and having a look at different things that were happening around the world, and one of the spots they landed in was San Francisco. In San Francisco themselves, they use a fairly large amount of their green waste and also their food waste through the recycling process, and then they put it out on their local farms. We thought, why can't we do that here locally in Australia? So they came back, they started to look at it, and it didn't take long. We commenced construction in October 2020 after we went through a fairly lengthy planning process, and really big thanks to Bundaberg Regional Council and Department of Environment and Science. Obviously the compliance side with all of this is quite high, so they worked really closely with us to get this thing off the ground. As I said, construction commenced in October 2020. We officially opened in April 2021 this year, so it's only a really new facility, very, very green, very new. So we're still testing it. We're still seeing what works, what doesn't work. And the beauty of it is it's free green waste for anybody in the Bundaberg region. So there's no cost associated with it. General public, commercial contractors all come and utilise our facility. All we ask is that they don't put contaminants in the facility. So we're really strict on how we deal with that and how we monitor that. But effectively, we get the stuff brought to us. And usually in this process, the biggest cost is us going out and getting the raw materials. So if we can get them to deliver it to our site, we've already started in front. It's fully automated, so when you turn up, there's some cameras there. You'll see the camera down the bottom there. That's our number plate recognition camera, and the one up higher, it'll actually take a photo of your face as you go through. So if you try to tell us that it wasn't you that day that was going through and dumping that contamination on the site, we'll have a photograph to see if it was or wasn't that particular person. We also have the number plate recognition. Everybody's invited until they do the wrong thing. So we just basically opened it up. It'll pick up the number plate and say, yes, it's an approved number plate. They'll come through. They come through and they dump onto our pad, which you'll see when you go out there today. And as they exit, it also reads the number plate to say they've exited the site. That's also our traffic management on site. So we allow up to 7 vehicles on site at any one time just for safety reasons. And that gives enough space for people to be able to unload. So as one person leaves, it'll allow the next person to come through. So usually 7's pretty much the good number we use. High definition cameras. We've got a camera on there that when we were testing it, we sort of panned it around and we had a look into the paddock and we could read the label on the side of the Coke can of a guy driving a tractor. So really good quality cameras. And we obviously need that because we want to be able to monitor and make sure we don't have contamination because it is unmanned. So we've got somebody there to be able to check on that. And to be honest with you, the general public are really good. If it's free and they know it's free, they generally work really closely with us to make sure that doesn't happen. The best one that we've got is the commercial contractors. So commercial contractors, obviously, it's a lot of money to dump their waste. So they're the first ones to sort of grab somebody and say, hey, look, you probably need to take that plastic bag home with you. So we've been really lucky. When we did our AS 4544 certification for the site, the Australian Standard certification, one of the things that we do is we reuse our overs back through the system. They were quite surprised because most facilities have a lot of contamination. When you screen that out, the contamination they need to be able to remove, we actually just put it back through because it's very rare that we do get the contamination through there. So probably the hardest thing to pull out, we've had a couple of crowbars and things that have gone through the grinder. It's always not pleasant, but they're probably the hardest things that we find, and they're not intentionally dumped. A sales kiosk, again, fully unmanned. Someone can walk up, push a button. We can do the sale of the compost, and then they can leave the site. So really good technology. That's just some of the stuff on site there. We've got obviously landscaped very heavily. When you go out there today, it looks more like a race course than a dumping facility, and that's exactly how we want it to feel. It needs to be nice when you come on site. It doesn't need to look like a rubbish dump. We've also got our... this one here is our intercom system, so you can push the intercom, you can speak to somebody on site, it sends a text message to his phone, he gets it on his watch, and he's able to then bring that number and talk to the person on there. You'll see there's our screen, that's the screen that we've got on site there, and you'll see that when you go out there today. Here's the stats, and this is one I pinched from Bundy Regional Council, but 22% of food and kitchen scraps and 32% of garden and vegetable waste end up in our wheelie bins. Really want to try and reduce that as much as we possibly can, and we all know the problems with that going into landfill. So as much of this as we can provide. So far this year, we've processed 11,500 tonne of green waste, and we've produced roughly around about 7,000 tonne of compost. The little stats down the bottom there, through our number plate recognition system, we're able to pick up the number of vehicles coming through. It also gives us a bit of an idea of busier months and things like that. You'll notice April's pretty high. That was our construction period, so we had contractors coming in and out, so that didn't really give us a good indication. Fully operational May, June, July, as you'd expect during those quieter months of the year where it's a little bit sort of less growth going on, not as much green waste coming through, and then you can see as it slowly ramps up into your spring and summer months, we're starting to really push up and get that numbers through. We've had 24,500 visitors to the site, and 22,200 of that is repeat visitors. So it's really good to know that once you come once, they'll keep coming back. Our products, we produce out of the green waste, we produce a mature compost, a pasteurised mulch, and a coarse mulch, which is a compostable mulch. The process basically is there. We'll explain it a little bit more when you go out on site today, but effectively it's 120 days from start to finish, 15 days pasteurisation to take out the weed seeds, but you get the product after 120 days. Environmental health check, the really important part about it, and this is probably the main motivation around, is it does ease the strain on landfill. It also boosts the soil biodiversity, reduces the weeds through our pasteurisation process, so we don't have that going out onto the farm, and then we minimise water evaporation. So in addition to this, it's not the only thing that we use on the farm, so we've now transferred across from more of our hard hose irrigators to lateral type irrigation. We're able to put the water straight into the product or into the crop. We don't have a lot of runoff from the farm anymore, so and with the introduction of the compost, we're actually not using as much water because that moisture is being retained in the soil. So more and more we're starting to get a bit of a picture of what it's doing to our farm. The important part about it is, though, there's no use us just sticking it on the farm and saying it's great. We actually need to start and test it. So we're working with different groups, the university in town, working through some of that monitoring process to actually get what is the results we're getting out of this. And that flows across to our water quality and reef certification. So we're now Hort 360 reef certified, but part of the farm redevelopment that we've been looking at is really focusing on where do we capture our runoff. Our farm is quite unique along the coast here. We are less than a kilometre between us and the Great Barrier Reef. So we've got our farm, there's some urban development, you hit Money's Creek and we're straight out into the Great Barrier Reef. So really important that we monitor that, and something that we really sort of take serious. So we've got a number of dams across the farm which take the sediment out, and a tailings dam now down at the bottom. Obviously, we did a lot of research around what we should do with that. We put it into place to see how it would go, and we haven't had the big flush of rain yet, but 20 mils not too long ago, we were able to get a glass of water and put it on the other side, and you couldn't see the red soil coming out, whereas previously that would flow straight across the road. So, and again, it helps that we have the main ownership of those farms in that location, so we've been able to come up with a regional solution rather than the individual farmers trying to work out what they were going to do there. So really, really great thing that we've got there. Effectively though, Green Solutions, as I said today, you'll come out and have a look at it today. Really great part of the new business, very exciting for us. We use the compost ourselves in our own facility, but we are now actually selling it out. We're producing that much of it, and we're starting to look at how we can really grow that part of the business. But from our point of view, we're hoping that this is a real sort of kicker as we go along and makes our production a lot more effective as we move forward. So thank you very much for your time today, and hopefully we'll see you all out there this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Nathan Freeman from Green Cells. Just a reminder too, with our panel, we're going to have Ray, who we heard from earlier, Nathan and Paul, our next guest speaker. If you do have any questions, put them on Slido now. We've got a couple of questions on there already, but if you have any questions at all that you'd like to ask our panel, start putting them on now, so we're ready to go then. So our next guest speaker is Paul Woosley, Managing Director from Orico Group. Paul Woosley's Orico Group is Australia's largest manufacturer of sugarcane mulches. The company provides sugar farmers with a complete service for what was an agricultural waste product and makes organic garden, landscape and horticulture products. Paul started the business on the Sunshine Coast when complaints about dirty ash from cane fires prompted an idea of repurposing cane trash. We know that too. Orico Group now operates a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility at Childers. The sugar-rich area produces over 3 million tonnes a year. The plant includes a composting facility with an annual capacity of more than 100,000 cubic metres of compost and a fully automated packing facility with an annual capacity of more than 10 million, is that right, Paul? 10 million loose fill bags and 5 million compressed bales of mulch products. That is a lot of product. Paul Woosley's Orico Group won EY's Entrepreneur of the Year program, North Queensland in 2015, and 2 years later, Woosley's Orico Group won the Westpac Business of Tomorrow program. Please welcome Paul Woosley.
Apologise everyone for the sound of my voice. It was a big day at the Melbourne Cup yesterday. My favourite number's 4. Before I get into this, I'll tell you a little story. My favourite number's 4. Chris Waller, who's a customer of ours, drew barrier 4. So me being the big punter I am, walked to the window and said, I want $4 on number 4. And they said, each way? And I said, yeah, each way, that sounds good. I didn't know what I was talking about. And they said, that's $8. I said, no, to win then, I just want to pay $4. So the horse went on to win, and Chris Waller uses hay grown right here in Bundaberg. So that was a great outcome for the day. Okay, Orico. Where's my clicker? Who we are. We're a privately owned company with 100 team members currently, and we provide what we class as an end-to-end solution. So we don't, on the end-to-end solution, we like to start at the farm, partnering with people like Greensill, start at the farm and take it all the way through to the end customer. Our key product would be cane mulch, but we're growing into a whole lot of other areas. Animal feed and bedding, garden products, which we've been in for a long time, and industrial products. All of those products we do, we try and value add. This is a photo of our composting site. Composting's great, huge market for the end use, for the end product, but it's very low value. And it's sort of where you send products when you finish with them. So we try in this process to extract other products out of that material that we can use for more valuable products rather than just putting it in a bag of compost. products we make from agricultural residues or primary crops. Of course, we've got our lucerne that we get from Greensill, but we've been doing a lot of work with sweet potato residue. That sweet potato is used in a lot of different industries, from pet food, rabbit and guinea pig food, and we're coming up with a product for the cattle industry at the moment. So we've actually taken the two products. One is a real genuine byproduct or waste product. The other one's a primary product. We've mixed them together. We then put them through our dehydration system, and these are the different products we get out of it. So that's actually sweet potato infused with lucerne. And that product, we've got that currently on trials in feedlots with Pet Barn, and also in dog food. The dog food industry is a massive user of the product. They're looking for starches and things that are in the sweet potato that they don't want to use from a grain-based starch. It's turning something that was a waste into a very valuable resource. So other products we do when we value add, we've got our kiln-dried lucerne. As I said, we're supplying that to Chris Waller. That will be our motto in our advertising very soon, I can assure you. But to give the customer experience that they don't normally get, we can do a complete feed in our bale, again back to value adding. That bale now, we've just invented the first one in the world that slices the bale inside the plastic so they can feed a day ration to their animal that they need. It's already pre-mixed, so if they're going to a show or anything like that, it can all be pre-mixed. And they just have to cut around the outside of the package, and they peel off the amount that they want to feed, and they give it to their bull, their cow, their horse, or whatever, and that comes in 7 different sizes, so they can peel a little bit off for their guinea pig. So that's something we've developed in-house, and it's the first in the world. When you're trying to value add and get a competitive product in the marketplace, you have to have automation. If you don't have automation to make that product a reality, you won't be competitive on the world market, and you won't even be competitive in the Australian market. So the level of automation we have is the highest level you can get. We do everything is automatic in the system, and we have robots, we have conventional stackers, different products, different equipment like that. When I started the business back in 1997, we were struggling to make 200 bags a day, 200 bags a day. We now do 100 a minute. And if anyone's coming on the tour, they'll see that this afternoon. This is the new product that we're starting to experiment with the growth of the macadamia industry in the Bundaberg area. We're processing or learning how to process the shell into a meal, and we're now experimenting with different products around that resource that's going to be available in the area. Products from industrial waste. This material, where we have a massive dehydration system on site, and we're dehydrating orange peel, apple pomace. Both of these products go into the pet food or the cattle industry, and they're quite exciting products. No one's doing the apple pomace in Australia. It's imported at the moment, and the orange peel's being done in South Australia, but not in Queensland. Forestry residues. This is a very interesting product for us in the local area. We've taken it to a different level. We buy a lot of waste log. They look like good logs to me, but they're either out of spec, or a lot of these logs that are being processed in front of you were destined for China. When the Chinese pulled out of the market, we bought the log back off the forestry. So we debark the log. We do anything with that wood material on site, from chipping, shredding, grinding, shaving. So a lot of this log ends up in animal bedding for shavings. So we shave that log ourselves. We collect the residue from the fields, and we process it, as I said, into any one of those forms. Packaging for us is a key critical thing. We have 7 different bale sizes. We have 5 or 6 different bag sizes. And we supply the market from Asia to all the local domestic retail stores. Again, value adding, end-to-end solution. A lot of our oversized products we're spreading around the tree crops in the area. And when it's a mulch, a composted mulch, that we've extracted a lot of the other materials out that we want for our premium potty mixes and different products like that. Again, there's some of our premium potty mixes. Last year we did 27 million bags or bales on site there, so a lot. Automation, this equipment here, smart technology. It's a robot in a box. It does a really neat job. Anyone that comes to site that's interested, I can explain it in more detail this afternoon. So we look forward to seeing you this afternoon. Hopefully everyone's coming on the tour.
Thank you so much, Paul. If you can stay here, and Ray, if we can have you up, please, and also Nathan. If you do have any questions, please go on to Slido now. Put your question in for these three gentlemen, and Ben Artup, Council's Executive Director, will be leading this panel. All good. So please make them very welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, Trish. And so I'll be facilitating a panel discussion for the next 15 minutes before we hop onto the buses and get out to some of the side tours, which I think will be exciting. But I've got a few questions here that have come through on slide 2, which I'll go through first. This first one's from Anonymous. So if you're here anonymous, don't put your hand up because you won't remain anonymous. The question is the reality that industry must make decisions to achieve sustainability that may not be economical? Is that true, that you've got to make decisions, business decisions every day that may not be economical, I guess, in the short term for a longer term gain or opportunity to grow your business? Is there truth in that statement from any of the companies here today? Yep. Yeah.
Ben, I'll just kick that one off. Obviously we've put in a compost facility. It's a $7 million facility there. It's fully private funded. There's no government funding that we've received for that. And as you'd appreciate, as Paul alluded to, compost is not the most highly valued product out there. So at the moment it costs us more to produce compost than what it actually does to get a commercial benefit out of it. But longer term, as we get more better with our efficiency and we obviously get more product through and those sorts of things, we can see that turning the other way. But we've had to bite the bullet and do it because it actually adds value to our rest of our operations within our business. So we're reducing the amount of fertiliser we're using. We're definitely using less water, which means less electricity costs and hopefully more product at the end. So it's just one of those decisions we've had to commercially make.
Great. Any of the others made sort of uneconomical decisions that are in the
I'd
short term?
just sort of comment that it's sort of on the same sort of line as that efficiencies of scale. So you can make a decision today because you're looking at the long term. Goals and future of the business. We've done that with what we do with the current wastewater out of our plant because we have plans for that. And you're basically taking a hit on that so that you retain that, that feedstock for something that later on you're going to be able to do when you have a better scale, better scale, efficiencies, more tonnage, that it makes it viable then. So that's one example, I guess.
No, there's a question here around, I guess, a circular economy. I know each of your businesses and individuals, you know each other. In some cases, you work together. You help each other out sometimes with the thinking and the planning. Is there any, I guess, insights into the benefits of having, I guess, a group of, similarly like-minded companies that are in the sort of the same space working together? Like, do you learn off each other? Do you lean on each other? Are there benefits from trying to replicate the relationships that you guys already have in our region?
Yeah, of course. We're neighbours with Paul, and also ISIS Sugar Mill, and I know that they've, I was sort of late, Johnny come lately on this relationship, but you know, it's just one of those ones that we're building more and more. And, you know, I think there's, you know, this discussion about us becoming a bit of a group as well, to address some of the, you know, the common interests and common issues that we're facing, like electricity supply and that sort of thing. But, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot together as a group. Ray and I share a lot of information. We work in closely with Greensill all the time, and it'd actually be great if we had a few more businesses in the area that were actually commercially involved in doing something in this space.
No, it's a good takeaway for today's conference, I think.
Ben, if I can just add to that too, it's important, I think, to think about things like, obviously Paul's in the space of compost and so are we, but we're not competitors. So we've got totally different ways that we deal with our product, what we do with it, who we market it to. So I think that's the important part, is that there are so many people out there that won't engage or won't interact because, oh, that could be a competition, or that might be, but I think it's leveraging off that sort of stuff. So there's so many facets and so many different ways you can look at products and how we produce things, and that's the beauty of all the sort of businesses we're involved with, is that not one person has come up with a particular idea. It's, I've got this sort of idea, and float that past somebody else, and then all of a sudden that just grows from there. And I think that's the important part, is that nobody's out there sort of just making the ideas up. It starts with a seed, and then it grows as soon as you start to talk to the rest of them.
Yeah, and I think that idea of getting a cluster or group together, particularly in the Childers area or wherever it is across the region, would be great to sort of, you know, replicate and expand on the success you guys have had. There's a question here around the compost, the market for compost. How's it going? Are you selling lots of it? Are you meeting your KPIs, or above or below expectations?
We're producing more compost. We're selling more compost than we can produce at the moment. So and always the hardest part is the input. So the amount of raw material that we get through the site is always going to be the limiting factor. So the more raw material we can get, the more compost we can make, the more markets we can see. But being such a fairly young business as well in that space, I certainly know that there are so many market opportunities out there that we haven't even looked at yet, nor have we had the time to investigate. We're just trying to get through the current growth stage. So, yeah, definitely.
There's just one question here for you, Nathan, around capacity. Do you have a limit to how much green waste you could take, or is it?
So that pad can do 64 windrows, and you roughly got a 200 to 250 tonne per windrow in there, and we can turn that over every 120 days. So it's probably more the limiting factor is actually the amount of raw material we get, rather than how quickly we can turn it over.
Yeah.
We'll take any overflow at all.
Okay.
We're actually looking at a pitch to put to Bundaberg Council at the moment, working with the two groups to give the best result to council with the best return, shortest supply chain, shortest transport distances and things like that. So anything that Nathan can't handle, we'll definitely handle.
That's great. Yeah. One for you, Ray. How important is the development of a regional circular economy for your business and industry, like a broader growth of the concept?
I think that's more of a internal, you know, driver for us as an organisation. You know, getting, you know, pulling that together again, it's important, but some of the issues that are standing in front of us, we talked about, you know, economics and stuff like that, some of the decisions that we can make to close those loops are still got to come when we can reach certain points of efficiency. You know, it's, I didn't get to the last slide, but it basically said stay alive. And, you know, it's really important to know where we're going, but it's really important to make sure we can damn well get there, eh?
Excellent. There's a question here around infrastructure and training needs of companies like yourself, your own companies. What are the big issues around training? I mean, I know we've got you know, challenges around attracting people and talent, but do we have the right mix of people for the growth of your businesses over time?
I'll start, and it's really difficult to get, you know, like we're looking at nearly wanting basically close to 50% of our staff to have a chemical engineering degree or something of that line. and that's obviously difficult to get. Then process engineers was one I was talking to a chap earlier about. The universities aren't even offering that, and so we've got to look at even process control at a level 2 and a level 4. I think it's critical. Even some of the stuff Paul's doing there, a lot of that automation, a lot of process work, those sort of things, automation, getting people coming through at that. What was a trade? It's almost a trade level. Is something that should be looked at. Some of those courses and those curriculums are out there, but they're not necessarily being promoted or activated. And I think that would be really helpful. And the other one, of course, is we're presenting and saying this is what we're doing, but maybe we should be talking to the colleges and have access to those career days and stuff like that too, because even just across this group, the diversity of roles, and that might capture someone's imagination, keep them in the region or bring them into the region.
What about your business, Paul?
Continuously running ads looking for people. And it's across from forklift operators all the way through to automation technicians, electricians, anything. The area is starved for resource at the moment. And I think it's an issue that's going to face every business in the area. When you're a little bit out of town from Bundaberg, which I call town, when you're at Childers, it's even worse. Nobody wants to drive that 30 kilometres to get there. And we're offering incentives, we're offering everything, but there's a lot of jobs out there, a lot of competition.
We're in the same boat as everybody else. I think the important part too, we look at, and I think it was actually Mark McCrindle was here recently talking about young people coming through now and having 31 different careers in their life. And I think we've had to change our thinking and go from that thinking to we're going to train somebody up and they're going to be here for the next 10 years to actually, no, we're probably just going to have this person and we're going to capture them for a short period of time. So we need to get as much of that knowledge into systems and processes that we can then move forward. So we really focus on that now is that part of that process. The other part as well is that you're not always going to have the technical knowledge or that expertise in-house. So it's about sort of developing those strategic partnerships with different groups or organisations or universities or whoever it is to know that there's a particular skill set out there that we don't need to have in-house. We can always get that from somewhere else as we need to. But we have the same problems with trying to retain a forklift driver or someone to work in a pack shed is very difficult because it is that high turnover. And at the moment, one of the hardest problems we've got is people trying to come to town and find somewhere to live. So with accommodation being so difficult at the moment, we've just put on a new financial person but can't move to Bundaberg yet because they don't have anywhere to actually go and live. So there's broader issues beyond our business that are sort of hindering our recruitment.
I guess subject to some of those issues, where I just get some reflections on each of the panel around where you see your businesses being in 5-10 years' time. So what are the big opportunities where you'd like to see your enterprises go in the medium to sort of longer term in terms of the circular economy and growth, I guess?
It scares me a little bit, and I mean that in a good way. If you've ever spent 5 minutes with Peter Greensill, you'll certainly realise that he's got a million ideas and where he can see the business going to. It's exciting. It's really exciting to see where it can grow and what it can do. I love the opportunities that we have locally here and the partnerships that we're forming amongst all the different groups. It's really exciting times, and like Paul was just saying earlier with the hay stock and hay feed side of the business and where you could market that too. And I think the opportunities there are just endless. And I think that's the benefit is that the more and more we build those strategic partnerships across all the different businesses, I think the more all the businesses will grow and benefit from it. So I really, it's hard to say where I see ourselves in 5 to 10 years because I can't see where we're going to be in the next 12 months. So,
yeah, we want to obviously maximise what we're doing up here at Childers and continue to get the most out of the forest, southeast Queensland, and then export in other words, replicate what we're doing elsewhere in Australia and around the world.
For me, it's trying to develop new products, working with the universities. If there's any universities in the room that have got an idea, We've got a processing facility that can do anything with natural fibre, anything at all. We can segregate it into 100 different particle sizes. There's a whole lot of things, a whole lot of opportunities from bioplastics to all the way through to pharmaceutical products that we can make with the fibre that we handle. We're at the very basic end of town, and we'd need that support from universities in the area that can actually come up with these nanotechnologies, or using cane fibre in carbon batteries, or products like that. You know, a smarter product from what was classed as a waste material. There should be no waste materials. They're residues at best. But when a byproduct becomes the primary product, at what point does it change from what you were growing it for to what we can make from it? And that's the area that we want to head as an organisation, finding those new products in the marketplace.
But just a question there for Paul, a really good point you make there. You say you're at the basic end and you're looking for university expertise to help you, I guess, grow. It comes to the question about innovation. It's a bit of a buzzword, innovation, but what is it? And I know you've got some incredible stories previously to get your business to this point, where you've done some, inverted commas, innovation, just by hand and just by, hard work and things lining up, and you've got some great success as a result of that. Can you tell us some stories around how you've addressed that or taken advantage of innovation in your business to grow?
Sure. So when I look at a product, that I look at two things: the innovation behind it, but is there a market for it? Is there actually, and what size is that market? We get a lot of people come to us and say, hey, we've got this product, we can sell it for $10,000 a tonne, but they only want to produce 1 tonne a year. And to me, that's not a commercially viable product at all. And we can't even commit team members to it to actually get that off the ground for 1 tonne a year. So you need to look at what innovation you need. You need to look at getting that product. Is there a market for it, and how big is that market space? As I said before, the compost market that we're in, it's a huge market, but it is you send products there when you don't want products anymore. You don't want to be in that space. You want to be developing products from the resource that's actually commercial volumes and a really good return on investment, because we live in a commercial world and we have to face that reality that it has to be profitable, or no one will do it. No one will want to chase down and develop a product unless it is profitable. So when we talk about innovation, it's coming up with a new product or a better way to do that product, but then what's the market size? What's the potential return out there? Can it actually become a world-beating product, and can we make it locally? So we look at resources all the time, but we're looking in the area here. We haven't gone out of the area just because of the commercial restraints of bringing a product in from anywhere else in Australia. So we're looking at coming up with products from mac shell, there's a lot of work that's gone into avocado seeds, a lot of work. They're making straws out of them in Mexico and different places, like sharing that technology and bringing that innovation to Bundaberg.
Great. Raymond, any stories of innovation from your
That's one I was thinking about. We've got a transfer bin that we built, which we built the factory as a bunch of different equipments and machinery that we've brought in from various places around the world to, and a lot of those were designed specifically for us. Some weren't, like the chipper obviously, things like that, but that interface between the chipper and the plant, and how do we control the feed to our plant on a continuous basis and give us a real-time understanding of what that flow is. And so we built this transfer bin, which has worked great from day one, but it didn't really have good storage capabilities to just load it up. So you could basically load it and walk away for an hour and know that it can, the boys can go and have a coffee or whatever. And the engineers came up with a system whereby just by placing some plates across this bin on a certain angle, that causes the wood to always flow off, and it doesn't, and it de-stresses the entire bin. And I just thought it was for a really minimum investment, but just great minds working on an issue that we had, because it would before when you'd load it up, it would basically put immense force on the end of this bin, and of course you would get inconsistencies in your feed rate. And so they've completely removed that issue. And I thought it was a great bit of innovation.
Great. Yeah, great example. Nathan, anything?
The one that comes to mind of recent, we're obviously part of the Bundaberg AgTech precinct, so we're working closely with CQ University, and one of the, I suppose it's not only just new innovation, it's also improving or refining your current operation. So one of the things that we've been working with at the university is a sweet potato that can basically look like a sweet potato, feel like a sweet potato. It's got all these sensors all over it. So we bury it in the ground, and as the sweet potato digger goes along, it picks up this sweet potato that's been buried into the ground, and it rattles through our different processes, and we're able to then see some of the pinch points through the process as to it might just be in the digger that there's a slight drop of an inch here, which then bruises the spud on a particular side, and then when it gets to the next stage, it does this and does that. So the whole way through the process, from digging right through to putting it into a box, we're able to actually see what impact that sweet potato goes through to get to there. So, and again, you're talking about a small change there, but we go from a 50% sweet potato to $1 sweet potato, and once you look at that across how many sweet potatoes we put through our packing facility a day and then a month and a year, it's such a change in the way we do our business. So, and I think that's it really, it's not just new innovation, it's also how do we refine what we're doing now and do it better.
Yeah, some great examples. I thought you were going to say they go in sweet potatoes that would come out deep fried chips or something. That would have been a great.
We're not that good yet.
Innovation for lunch, which leads me to my next point. So thank you for the speakers for the panel and the time you've given us today for your talks and sharing through the panel. So I'm going to hand back to Trish now, who's going to tell you what's next. Off onto the site visits.
Thank you. Can we please thank our panel and Ben? Fantastic. So thank you to those who have already put things on the word cloud. Could we have that back? Thanks, Lockie. So this is fantastic. Everyone who's put things on, if you'd like to put something on there, if you actually agree with one of the words, type that one in and it will get even bigger. So it's a really great way for us to get some feedback on how you've found the day. Please continue that as you'd like to. So there's going to be a small 10-minute break before boarding the bus to the site visits. Lunch will be available on the bus. That's the most important thing. You will not go hungry. And expect to be back here at 5 p.m. I'd really like to thank everyone who has made the Bundaberg and Wide Bay Bioeconomy Conference such a success. Of course, our partners, Bundaberg Regional Council, Fraser Coast Regional Council, Gympie Regional Council, and Bundaberg Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning. Really appreciate those, of all our trade displays, all our wonderful presenters, and of course, all of you, our delegates. Please, thank you all. So for those of you going on these site visits, please enjoy those this afternoon, and we look forward to welcoming you back next year. Thank you.